It's giving me somewhere. Yeah, it's going live. Hey folks, it's kind of live in some places, and it's still. Oh, I know what's going on, but I'm not going to tell you guys.
Ha ha. Yeah.
April Fools, a little bit.
Oh.
Anyway, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We're the CRM Playaz.
Yes, we are.
Any more to be said?
At this point, after 14 years, not really. It's like anything we add will literally have been something we already said.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to add it because we got a show to do, and that's what we do. That's what we do here on Thursday afternoons. And the other thing that we usually do on Thursday afternoons at the beginning of the show, as I tied a tap dance, and I tap danced just long enough because now it's time for the thing everybody's been waiting for, the moment of Sven.
Oh
Whoa,
boy.
what the?
I've got an idea though. And he has something to, well, he's actually got that's an audio file. Can we play that?
No. I would love to know how that's pronounced, but you want to take?
Well, I think it's I'm taking no, God no, but I am taking a crack at same with you, Polish. That's what I'm saying.
I'm thinking it's Polish.
Me too.
I don't know why.
Well, there's a couple of indicators there. The words that end frequently in J, like you'll note, there's at least 1, 2, 3 words that end in J there. That's something I see with Polish. The other thing is, you see that sort of L?
Rebecca and Patrick have already factored in it's Polish too.
That's right. That's 4 votes for Polish.
Sorry, Sven, we're not going to be able to play this. Not at the last moment. Sorry. You're just going to have to let us know if we were right or wrong. I have a good feeling about this one. Rebecca and Pat, especially Patrick. You know, Rebecca is one thing, but if Patrick says it's Polish.
I know. Well, I mean, this is actually it's 5 votes. You, me, Rebecca get 1 each, and Patrick gets 2.
Right. And for all of you out there, Patrick is Rebecca's dog. That's why we're.
Oh, so this is what this means.
Greetings, my friends of this value-based and visionary weekly exchange.
Sven, you are the master of a lot.
Patrick is sure. We're glad now. We know now, but knowing that Patrick's sure.
Right. That's it, man. I mean, Patrick's our other mascot now.
I know. And whenever Minnie's not able to fill in, Patrick is at the ready.
I know, which is pretty awesome.
All right.
2 of the best of the best.
What else is pretty awesome? Look at that segue. How you like that? That was pretty good.
I somehow know where this is going to.
Well, we got a really great guest that'll be coming up shortly. We'll wait and let you do your introduction because that's what people come on the show for. They don't really come on to talk to us. They just really come on to hear you introduce them. And then we're lucky if they stick around after that.
That's right.
All right. But we got a lot of stuff before we get to the guests. Yeah, we've got some news, some interesting segments. One that has just, caught the world by storm. And we have news around that. But you know what? Before we talk about that a little bit, you know what? Yesterday's happy hour was really quite the happy hour. Lots of great exchanges. And it's funny. One of the subjects that came up, because we were talking about, what else everybody else is talking about. There's some chat GPT stuff in there. There's some OpenAI stuff. But we also got on this subject of whether Substack's new notes feature could be a Twitter killer. And, we had our buddy, the venerable Steve Gilmore, who was all over that stuff. But I was looking at Substack, and one of my buddies over there, Michael Markman, he posted a link to this article. Now, this is in the Substack chat. I'm already feeling like I mean, I haven't really used Twitter that much in a long time, but it feels like the way I used to use Twitter, I'm starting to use Substack like that. And so he posted this article about could Notes, this new Substack Notes feature, could it be the Twitter killer? Say that about 5 times
The
in a
Twiller killer.
row. Yeah.
The Twiller killer.
But you know what? You know why this was really interesting to me is because remember about a month ago, there was a TechCrunch article that said Twitter is dying.
Yeah.
So if Twitter was already dying, almost feel like it's kind of sort of near dead. Why there's Notes is not really a Twitter killer, right? I mean, seems like there's a lot of just a lot of general movement away from Twitter and kind of towards Substack and maybe even LinkedIn too. What do you think?
Well, the answer is sort of, I don't know. Look, again, am I going to call Substack Notes a Twitter killer? I don't know. I haven't used it. I haven't used it yet. I've looked at it. I like what I see. It's, short form kind of content, things like that. But thanks,
Yeah,
friend. You're right. Appreciate it. But let's say this. I don't think anything's going to be a Twitter killer except Elon Musk himself. Right. Beyond that, it's what I said, I think, last week when we were talking with the Colder Ice, right? Which was ultimately Twitter is embedded deeply in the communications media that people use, refer to daily, and it's in the billions at level, if you know what I mean, in terms of communication. You don't just dislodge that very easily. With Substack has, at this point, look, Substack's got tons of promise. It's bringing back I'll call it a media and an art form, the newsletter, and then associating a lot of other things with it to become a little more of a communications hub almost. Which is what it's becoming, but it doesn't have the traction yet to even come close to being a Twitter killer, right? I mean, right now it's a very interesting experiment that I think has legs that can go somewhere. But at the same time, I would hardly make pronouncements like that, and I wouldn't even try to make a case for something like that at this point. There's no reason to.
I think you said it right. If there is a Twitter killer, it might be Elon. I don't know.
Yeah. The only
I don't
one.
think it's Substack or maybe it's just natural slow death. I don't know. Anyway, so that was interesting to see that. Got to do a plug because tomorrow, if I can bring this up.
Yeah, there it is.
He's a friend of the show, a friend of us, also the CTO of Pega, but also comedian. I mean,
he is amazing, an improv comic, and he actually literally was. I think he was a professional improv comedian, but if not, he at least, from what I understand, did the actual clubs. Went out and did improv comedy at venues.
And I think he must have been in the middle of a joke when this picture was taken, actually, because
he was waiting for you to laugh.
But we've got such interesting feedback from this picture. And I'll tell you another one, because it's like, kind of there's something going on there. He's saying something and he's deadly serious about the comedy. I don't know. But we got a lot of comments on that because of the dramatic, face. But we also got a lot of comments on, look at that. Look at how dramatic that one is too. I mean, and then you combine the two. Whoa.
Yeah. But that is frightening, man. That's just outright scary. I want to hang up now.
I mean,
it looks like, off the feed.
It looks like they're both peering into our souls.
And it also looks like both of them are saying, "Hey, we're coming for you." We're coming for you.
Kind of in a matter of speaking, one is in about a few minutes, and the other tomorrow. So
that's they're coming to us. I hope, not for us.
Yeah. So Don is tomorrow at noon, and we're still, I'm holding out because before we introduce our guests, two things real quick. We heard from our buddy John Reed that the site he co-founded with a couple other of our buddies including Phil Wainwright and Dennis Howlett.
Howlett.
Yeah. That Diginomica is coming up on its 10th anniversary. And we thought it'd be cool to like say, you know, happy birthday, congratulations. I mean, they do a lot of great stuff over there. They do a lot of real deep content in a time period where really good deep stuff is really lacking. They have stepped it up and put that on their site and put a stamp in the ground for real content, real meat in a land where you know, there's not a lot of it. And I think that's so cool that they, first of all, they started and they're still doing it after 10 years.
Yeah, look, to me, they are after, and I, like you, I've literally been reading them for 10 years, right? I've even written occasionally for them. And I will tell you, they are my go-to site. As far as the quality of content, the material that they produce, nobody produces more cohesive, better, and deeper content. And you know what else they do? And it's focused strongly on, you know, enterprise technology and the industry as a whole and the marketplace. But the other thing they do it with some flair and some humor, and you know, and the quality of the writers, you know, and just all of them, from John and Phil to basically everybody, really, and the entire team, Stuart. I mean, they're incredible.
Yeah.
They're literally probably in one place the best writers in the industry. And I happy 10th, man. And you know what? I see, I won't be around for it, but what I'll do is when I hit about 90, I will do a happy 100th anniversary thing for you guys and leave it in the archives for production when you hit your 100. Wow. Right. So I think you guys are extraordinary. I really do.
I think you'll be around for it. But anyway, we'll move on from that. Also, shout out to some of their like guest writers, like our buddy Brian Summer. You can see his stuff over there a lot. Dennis every now and again. Dennis Palmer
every now and then. Absolutely.
Lots of good stuff. So congratulations to 10 and to 10 more. All right.
You're the best.
One last thing. Oh, we got to say hello to Sahil.
Sahil, thanks for being up, man.
All right. So we've been doing something. It started off as kind of a gimmick, a little bit of a joke, but it has definitely caught steam. And what am I talking about? Stump the Godfather, not Stump. Stump the Godfather. Now, this is like, you know, kind of a boring. We're going to work on a new like splash screen. You know why we're going to work on that? Because this segment, Stump the Godfather, has a brand new sponsor that we are introducing right now. And guess who that sponsor is? I'm actually going to play a little clip to tell you who that sponsor is.
Dynamics 365 Copilot. AI-powered assistance to get more done with less effort. The world's first AI Copilot in both CRM and ERP.
That's right, Microsoft Dynamics, or is it Microsoft Copilot? Is it like the AI actually sponsoring us right now?
Well, I mean, you know what's I mean, we have Microsoft as our sponsor, obviously, and Dynamics Copilot is the product that they're putting forward, and that goes even deeper into Viva Sales, and which has has some unique characteristics. And we're analysts, okay? So we look at things, we nitpick at them a lot, really. And when it comes to the good side of what Viva Sales does, for example, and Copilot provides, one of the things that I've said this as an analyst, I'm saying this with them as a sponsor, is it automates repetitive tasks. It automates tasks that aren't even that repetitive, but are necessary, but people just don't like to do. And what that goes to, and this is to me the most important thing that any customer engagement or employee engagement goes to, is it goes to convenience. It makes things convenient for the salesperson, right? And that you look at Copilot, you look at the world we're in now, you look at AI that's out there, you look at Microsoft's transformation as a company to really an AI focused company. And this is where you see the condensation of the quality of this kind of thing. And it's one of the first to market like that.
The thing about it I like is, like you said, salespeople traditionally they don't like using CRM applications, but this kind of gives them more of a reason to use it. It helps them write their emails with actual context. Yeah, that's actually kind of good stuff. And you know what? I like the name. I like Copilot.
Yeah, well, it's actually, it's funny. Microsoft's the first ones to use that, but it's being picked up.
Yeah,
in a lot of different places now, and it's what it means. I mean, it's ultimately the. Oh, I know you know what it means. That's rhetorical, right?
Tell me.
Basically, what does it mean? Basically, there's a lot of fear about AI replacing jobs, and that's a lot of the word Copilot goes to alleviating the fear, really. Right. When you're boiling it down to it, yes, it becomes your aid in making your job both more effective and efficient and more enjoyable. And that's kind of the idea of Copilot, regardless whether it's Microsoft in this case or not. I mean, the concept is alleviate the terror of Skynet, right? Get rid of, right? And at the same, understand that AI becomes your bud in that it aids you in producing more effectively than you would have produced otherwise.
Yeah, Copilot, Wingman might have been an interesting choice.
I would have gone with that one, actually.
Copilot work.
Let's start pushing for Wingman. Actually, I think that's not a bad idea. I like that better.
We got a copywriter do something with that first before we.
Right, and also, yes, Sven, it is our first advertising in CRM Playaz in ever.
History.
Part of PPN. This is history being made. You will be seeing more coming from other sponsors and further from Microsoft. So you'll see a link in the notes as to where to go if you want to look for more information about Microsoft Dynamic Copilot.
Absolutely. And Sven, if you want to look for a sponsor for the moment of Sven, feel free. We're open for that as well.
And then we can maybe play that audio link in the browser.
All right. So now the actual question, because we got to get our guest on. Our actual question, the first sponsored stump, I almost did it. I almost said stump the Godfather is, according to the 2023 Microsoft Business Trends Survey, blank out of 10 workers said automation and AI-powered tools will help them focus on meaningful work. Blank out of 10. What is blank?
Well, I'm assuming for reasons I won't explain this number. Okay. I'm going to say 6.
Okay. 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
So 6 is that your final answer?
This Jeopardy. Right. Yes. It's my final answer.
Rebecca, Patrick, Sven, if any of you have a guess, you want to put it in within the next 10 or 15 seconds, because we have to reveal the answer to this. All right. Sahil says 7. All right. Sahil says 7. Rebecca says 8. Oh, so now if this was The Price is Right, they're kind of like trying to one up, position.
And Patrick says 9.
Patrick
said 9.
He's fighting with him. All right. Sven. All right. Sven is 8. So we got you at 6, Sahil at 7, Rebecca and Patrick at 8, and Sven at 8. All right. That's enough.
I have to go with Patrick, So.
All right. So here it is. And this is the answer, and it's coming to you via video form. How about that? Here we go.
Oh, whoa.
10 workers said that automation and AI-powered tools would help them focus on meaningful work.
9 out of 10.
9. Ugh.
9 out of 10.
That seems high to me, but if that's what it says, that's what it says.
And Patrick says wolf, so okay.
So Patrick was right, though. He said 9 out of 10, remember?
Patrick, Rebecca, and Sven said 8.
No, I said Patrick said 9. He told me.
He told you. Okay. All right. So anyway, that is the first sponsored Stump the Godfather. I almost said
sponsored by Microsoft.
sponsored
9 out
by
of 10.
9 out of 10.
You know, for at a future discussion, we should probably discuss whether that number is high, right? That's an interesting possible discussion.
By the way, before I let you do your intro, I actually went to Adobe Firefly. There, you know, the new AI image generating tool from Adobe. I was like, I wonder what images would come up with for Stump the Godfather, because you know we need something different than this. So I just threw it in there. I didn't know, you know, what was going to happen. So all right, so here are a couple of ones that come up when I typed in Stump the Godfather.
All right. That's horrible.
Is that like an ascot? I don't know what
yes, that is definitely an ascot. And this guy is heading to the final race he's ever going to be at before he dies. Right.
All right, let me
tree stump.
Let's keep moving. Gosh. That was another one that came up. Now, this guy is, at least he got some shades on.
That's the ghost after he died.
One more. Now they must think there's a Colonel Sanders thing going, because
no, that's a God thing. Look at that. I think they need to get past the stump being a tree stump.
I know,
right?
But it's an interesting visual. I mean,
I have to say it is kind of cool in its own way. Although, if I had the option, I'd probably pick number 2.
Number 2. All right, now, so we'll keep working on that. But I did have to ask, because so many times when I say Stump the Godfather, I'm very close to saying Stomp the Godfather. So I had to look.
Oh my gosh!
I had to see what would come up. All right, here we go.
Oh,
why they put you in a straitjacket?
I don't know. And then it looks like they have they threaded my face.
I mean,
which of course doesn't look like my face.
Well, not all Godfathers are like 90 years old. I mean,
that one's 150. This guy.
And this is the one that was slightly troubling to me, because it looked like the poor dude had an ace bandage put over his forehead, like somebody had bashed him or something.
That's Abraham Lincoln after they dug him up from his grave.
So anyway, having some fun. The playing around with the Firefly has really been fascinating.
The thing that's frightening about all of this, though, is that it's basically doing grandfather, not Godfather. Right.
I wasn't gonna go there. But anyway,
every one of them.
Yeah, I do still like the Colonel Sanders looking dude, though. All right,
I'll go with the sunglasses. All right.
So now it's time for me to turn things over to the venerable Paul Greenberg to introduce today's guest.
Okay, so this gentleman, Chris Duffey, I met him literally at Adobe Summit just a few weeks ago, and a one-on-one, and it was fascinating. Chris has multiple titles, but if you're basically, let's say, distilling out who he is, he's Adobe's futurist, and he's Adobe's metaverse strategist / architect, right? And he literally, the best way to put it, he lives that part, right? I mean, he's one of these people who has that big brain that right, and there's a lot of right brain part to it, but he also knows how to think in a way that allows him to peer into what might be a future effectively, meaning when you hear what he has to say, it's believable, as opposed to some, let's call him he's not the Adobe fantasizer, he's the Adobe futurist, right? Yes. Well, because you have people, when you hear them, these so-called futurists, they go out and they just spin out whatever the hell and think they can get away with it because it's 10 years later, right? So in his case, these make sense, and Adobe makes plans based on what he's saying. He's a really, really cool guy also. And so we had him on, of course, the watch party with Roberto Hernandez of PwC. And we began talking about the state of the metaverse. And we weren't able to talk too long about it because we were doing a watch party. So we thought, what a good time to bring him on and to continue that discussion on where we are in the metaverse. And this guy, it's going to be fun.
By the way, before we bring him on, he's also the author of the book Decoding the Metaverse that came out earlier this year. So I think we have the right person to bring on and talk about this. So why don't we do that? Hey, Chris, welcome.
There he is.
Great to be here. How are you guys?
We're good. We're frightened of your picture, though.
Yeah,
Too funny. I have to admit, I've enjoyed the intro so much. I was a little hesitant for this opportunity to talk to you. I just wanted to walk.
I do that on purpose.
absolutely. No,
I want to make you scared. No.
Glad you stuck around, man. One of the things that immediately I'm thinking about when we were at Adobe Digital Summit a couple of weeks ago, and of course the things that caught the most attention were around the generative AI and Adobe Firefly and things of that nature. But one of the things that, because you're steeped in the metaverse as well, I asked this question. I'd love for you to kind of share your thoughts again with the audience. All the thunder and steam felt like it got transferred from generative AI to away from the metaverse. And I asked, and I also asked Roberto, what does that do to the metaverse? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Is it, it just feels like there's more room for the metaverse to breathe now that all the emphasis isn't on it. But what are your thoughts?
Sure. As much as obviously, I think I'm in a similar school of thought as both of you. I'm a big fan of technology and what it can do for individuals, businesses, and society. We tend to overhype quite often technology, and we then have this almost volatile hype cycle that ends with a bust cycle. And very interestingly, the bust cycle, if we agree to call it that right now, for the metaverse is coinciding with a hype cycle of generative AI. And so I think the longer term hope is they both balance out, and we'll soon see that they're going to be very complementary in terms of CRM and ultimately greater digital experiences. As we all know, our lives are becoming more and more digitally enhanced. So I think in the end, it will balance out. But right now, we're just going through the early stages in terms of AI and the metaverse.
Do you think that with let's say the hype quieted and people taking their eyes off it for a little while, does that give you more room to work?
I think so. I think it's a reaction, a rightful reaction. I think in terms of the broader marketplace volatility, and so I think companies are rightfully kind of going back to their core capabilities. And so I think some of the metaverse, maybe overinvestment, is getting pulled back or reassessed. And so I think that's one contributing factor. The second one is, we've seen with the crypto had a similar kind of bust cycle, and we're balancing that out as an industry currently as well. So I think those are both reflective of what's happening with the metaverse. But after spending 2-3 years going deep into every nook and cranny from a research perspective, I have to say I'm 100% convinced the metaverse is inevitable. The only thing I'm somewhat uncertain of is the name or the term metaverse. Will that stick around? But we're still 6 to 8 years out from a hardware standpoint. I believe that's going to be the iPhone moment for broader adoption. So we're building out the broader ecosystem currently, and I think some really exciting innovations are happening in the space as we speak.
So
Oh, go ahead. You got to follow up?
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Brent.
So it's really interesting when you talk about 6 to 8 years out. It feels like, is that in dog years or internet years? Because it feels like we're traveling on these different kind of time compendiums here with things. Does the all that's taking place now with the generative stuff, how does that help the metaverse out?
Thanks for the shout out of the book Decoding the Metaverse. I wrote a book about generative AI about 7 years ago,
Wow.
and I still remember going to some conferences where literally the pattern was a blank stare very quickly turned into anger. And I am somewhat validated, personally, professionally, to see where we are with generative AI 7 years later. And I think we're at a very similar pattern with the metaverse right now. A lot of experimentation. So encourage companies not to overinvest in terms of whether they're building out the products or using the metaverse as a marketplace. I would still caution people to use it in a very launch and learn aspect. So I think, again, very early days for the metaverse on a multitude of levels. I think that's echoed in some of these standard forums that are starting to emerge around the world. And one of the big, I think, conversation points that we need to align on very quickly is standards, specifically around, not to get too technical too fast, but standards around interoperability. And I think once we get some of these foundational standards and agreements in place, the chips are going to fall into place very quickly.
So what are some of the to your point on standards, until when the internet, in effect, when the WCC came around and finally standardized protocols, that's when the internet became something that could be used in a global sense, without people basically butting heads nonstop. And I saw standards being done actually in sort of interesting early days with many years ago with Oracle. I went to their lab, and the lab was basically kind of their it was a behavioral lab, but what it did is, for example, you would put on a device on your head, and it would monitor all your eye movements on a screen, and it was for UI UX, standardization, or UI UX research. And Anna Wyshansky, who ran the lab, told me that they, IBM, Microsoft, a few other companies, I don't know if Adobe was involved, actually had built out a standard for UI UX that had been adopted, and UI UX at that point again became interoperable, right? Meaning you could use this UI UX with that device and application. So to your point on standardization, I think that's mission critical. What are some of the things that, when you said early stage, time to play it a bit cool, but things you can do, what are some of the things companies or people can actually do in terms of testing, research, application now that would be, let's say, not ridiculous?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something that pops up quite often. And I'm glad you brought up that reference to the early days of the web. I've been saying a lot lately, as much as things seem to change, the more they stay the same. Yeah. And we've seen patterns throughout technology waves or phases over the last 10 to 15 years that we can really learn from, and hopefully get a faster innovation cycle. My thinking has somewhat evolved in terms of recommendations for getting involved with the metaverse. With artificial intelligence, I quite often recommended almost a digital center of excellence for AI, and embed it into a team and find a project and launch and iterate and then land and expand off of that. My thinking has somewhat evolved with the metaverse, where I've been advising, recommending, just suggesting, offering that people, companies, and culture just start to adopt some of the core characteristics of the metaverse. And I think some of that process will just help with that mind shift change. And so I think that's a great starting point. I took great reference, speaking of looking at history, from the Phoenix Project, which is a book a few years ago
Yeah.
about DevOps.
Yeah.
And they took I think a provocative approach at the time where they were very hesitant to define DevOps. They rather described it. And so I tend to adhere to that approach as well, where I like to describe versus define the metaverse. And I describe the metaverse with 7 or so characteristics. And these are the things I suggest for folks to just try to incorporate into their mindset or existing projects. And those are immersive 3D opportunities, real-time capabilities, ownership or co-ownership, interoperability that we touched on earlier, shared experiences. How can you create a brand shared experience, which is somewhat of a provocative or scary thought for some brands to have a shared experience where you're giving up some ownership, shared economy, and then persistence. And so any of those, I think, will help get us to that endpoint of the metaverse mindset even more quickly.
How have those 7 evolved over time? Were those 7 that you started out with and they're still the same, or as time has gone by, how have those evolved? And by the time it really hits the mainstream, are there going to be other things that are going to be just as important as those 7?
Interesting. You bring up a moment from a couple of years ago where I almost had a moment of realization. I would go to a lot of these. I recently moved to Miami, and there's a great Web3 community down here. And I'd go to a lot of these crypto or blockchain or Web3 conferences, and obviously a lot of very intelligent people from a technology standpoint. But I started to notice a lot of conflation between concepts, principles, and approaches. And I had a similar realization that we are conflating the metaverse and Web3 quite often. And so that quite honestly was the inspiration for the book, was this need to help detangle these core concepts of the metaverse and Web3. So to your point, I don't know if the core principles have changed as much as they've been rightfully delineated to this is what the metaverse is and is not, with some elasticity or flexibility, and this is what Web3 is and is not, and this is how they can work together to create better immersive experiences going forward. And then we bring in the AI bit to help personalize it more effectively, efficiently, and at scale, and that's where it gets quite exciting.
So you could see maybe as more hands-on experiences with these Gen and AI tools that you wrote about 7 years ago. There's just starting to scratch the surface now. They'll have an impact on everything, and then they'll also impact the way the metaverse will eventually be kind of created or evolved into what actually will be used.
Absolutely. At Adobe, putting my Adobe hat on, we tend to think of Gen AI from our lens from 4 horizon points. The first being text generation, the second being image generation, which you highlighted with something we're quite proud and excited about, Project Firefly. Encourage everyone to jump in and take a spin with the beta.
Not if it turns up what I look like.
I'm going to come back to that. I got the third one is the third horizon is generative 3D, which is very applicable to the metaverse. And then the fourth one is generative video. And they're not sequential, but those are kind of the 4 horizons. There's, in the broader sense, generative coding and development and presentation, but those are kind of our core focuses. Interestingly, generative text is what was probably the first one that really helped spark this big movement. Ironically, it's probably the toughest of those 4 horizons, just because of all the nuances of the language, specifically English. And so that, Paul, that gets to as you both were flashing those images, the thought, observation, realization, we're still early days in, being very specific to the outcome of text prompts for image generation. And so that's part of, training the models, learning from what's generated. And then also a very strong point that you both brought up is the importance of the human in the loop, to use a computer science term, that by no means are we, or I think the broader industry, implying that it's a complete replacement in this regards to human creation, but even more broadly speaking. So in this sense, it gets you to a starting point faster, and that's where the human in the loop can go in and adapt or train the model for what they want, even more so in the future. So quite exciting, but still early days from a generative AI standpoint as well.
We had a question come in from our buddy Sven. There are many new topics like metaverse, AI, and more. Are companies able to follow this speed, or do we need to slow down to give them time using things in the right way? If it is too fast, it may break topics.
Great question. Something that's been emerging over the last few months is this notion, topic, subject of technical debt. And, my view on it is, I think we almost have to reframe the idea of technical debt as it's more of an investment of learning versus a hindrance of holding a product or a company back. So even if you're not, even if you don't have a slam dunk, with a product, that first iteration, there is still great value in the learning that got you to that V1. So I would offer that as almost a reframing of, does it slow it down versus is it informing for future innovation?
That would be a big change in how people view technical debt. I'll tell you that. I mean, to your point though, look, the thing, if you look at sort of some of these older technologies that failed, like, one of my and Brent's personal favorites, and Sven's too, Clubhouse, social audio. Social audio as per se is not a terrible idea. I mean, it's basically a live podcast really with the audience, and some conversations. It's like
a channel.
Yeah. And Clubhouse itself was a terrible idea.
As a standalone.
Because of what it was too.
Yeah.
I mean, because of the way they framed it, everything about it was basically celebrities, moth to flame. And then when the flame gets a little bit duller, they leave and go on to the next thing. And in the meantime, and Clubhouse dies. And then Brent last week showed that investments, and it's because of Clubhouse too, investments in social audio are zero. Right? Nobody's investing in, nobody cares about it. And Brent and I had a guy who was kind of a friend of ours who actually said, "Oh, quit LinkedIn and come to Clubhouse. This is where it's at." Right? And I still remember that because it was such to be honest, a dumb statement at the time. Right? But the thing is that, that effectively is when somebody's viewing things from the standpoint of technical debt, what gets killed is social audio, right? But if you're viewing it from the standpoint of learning experience, social audio as a channel can survive, and you can improve. Look at the strategy of Microsoft over the years. You go all the way back, when Netscape and Quattro Pro and WordPerfect ruled the world, right? They just waited. They made mistakes, all three of them. Microsoft learned from those mistakes, came in as not first mover, but second mover. And of course, Microsoft took over because they fixed the mistakes that the first movers made. And if they had viewed things from the standpoint of technical debt, those things would have died and Microsoft would not be where it is, right? So to your point, I think It's actually kind of as much as people could claim, oh, it's semantics. It's really not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an outlook that I think is important, and I think promoting that outlook's a good idea from everybody's standpoint, yours, ours, period.
Maybe one extension of that thought you brought to mind is I've been noticing a lot lately in these conversations around emerging technology that the conversation quite often defaults to an extreme, whether it be a utopia or a dystopia.
Right.
And, I think I started going into like, what is the psychology behind some of that thinking? And I think it's just human nature in some respects for cognitive shortcuts to put it into a bucket for, quicker comprehension. But I would offer that there's actually, if we look at the patterns of technology, there's somewhere in between. Wired magazine often calls it protopia, which is this idea of incremental advancement. And so rather than we're going from an extreme to extreme, we're making these incremental improvements, whether it be on business impact or technological advancement as well.
So as a futurist, how long have you kind of considered yourself to be a futurist?
It's interesting. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I had interesting, upbringing. My mom was Mexican, and my father was Irish. And I didn't realize it until maybe a few years ago that that dynamic in Wisconsin was somewhat of an anomaly. And so I think throughout my life, I've always gravitated towards these unexpected things and found interest in trying to connect the dots. In college, I kind of gravitated towards, and Paul, I thank you for the kind intro, a very much right brain, left brain approach. And, there's some wonderful thinkers that are very heavily right brained. There are some wonderful, thinkers that are left brain, but I've always had a fascination of connecting these unexpected things. And so, I think that's how I, futurist is a very kind, title label that we're talking about, but I think I gravitate towards curiosity, and how can curiosity help, pressure test, improve the status quo in how we approach things, whether it be on an experience level, a product level, or a marketing level.
So if you're looking at it with that kind of whole brained approach, let's say, so you're looking out, like I try to look out 2 or 3 years. That's about it. At that point, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure.
Beyond 5 is very tough.
Yeah, and actually, when you and I were having our one-on-one, you mentioned that specifically, that beyond 5 is tough. So let's take it within your 5-year window.
Yeah.
All right. If you're looking out at, let's say, what's happened with Adobe, because you made 2 extremely significant announcements to me, Firefly and Content Supply Chain. And they obviously have very short term, but a lot of long tail implications, and especially Content Supply Chain has huge long term and long tail implications. How do you actually look at that evolution, both of the actual product, let's call it the product solutions approaches, but also Adobe as a company? Where do you actually begin to see Adobe and those solutions in the world? And I'm deliberately not saying market. I'm saying in the world generally, over that 5-year period.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, maybe two ways to answer that or offer some insight into Adobe, which, is a fascinatingly well-run company for the size that Adobe has achieved over the last few years. you know, the when you talk with a number of our engineers about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on, there's a bit of a grin because we've had that embedded into a number of our software for years and years. And so I think for someone to state 10 years ago, they could have stated the impact of generative AI is not realistic. But I think what Adobe does well is we have the bits and pieces that we have the organizational agility to move when and where advancements happen or can happen. So I think that's one lens. From a marketing, digital experience, CRM perspective, I think what we're seeing is this opportunity to have an immediate impact on efficiency very quickly with generative AI and a number of our current tools and near-term tools. But that margin for efficiency only gets businesses so far. The true, I think, next level is scalability. And that I would say is the kind of where we're entering into that phase next, is this ability to free up people to do what people do best. And that's critical thinking, innovation, creativity. And that is going to unlock this next era that we're about to enter, whether we call it the metaverse or Web3 or some yet to be defined term. But I think it's truly an exciting moment that we're right on that tipping point to get into this. The unleashing of scalability of innovation and creativity is quite exciting.
So what fascinates you or interests you more? You know, the future kind of impact on efficiency, on being able to scale, or being able to do things that we haven't dreamed before? Where do you kind of gravitate towards?
Yeah, maybe an example is previous to Adobe, I spent about 15 years on the digital health side. And I think in 2013 or 2014 was invited to use Google Glass for one of the first healthcare use cases. And we brought it into a breakthrough technology that was at the time and still is today a wonderful therapeutic opportunity for cancer. And it had this very unique MOA, as the industry calls it, mechanism of action, where it goes literally into the cancer cell and kind of short circuits its GPS called a BTK. And by that nature, it breaks up the tumor, and then the body has its own natural ability to kind of win against the individual cancer cells. Very simplistic description of that drug, but we wanted to represent that in an equally innovative way, and we showcased that MOA with Google Glass to oncologists, and that still sticks with me. We're coming up on 10 plus years from that. That still sticks with me as a great use case example of how technology plus an industry innovation really just creates people to somewhat dream and be re-inspired. So my hope for all of these tools is, whether it be Gen AI, the metaverse, Web3, is it's going to spark inspiration to kind of solve some of the world's biggest problems. And we unfortunately have a number of them at the moment.
I mean, given that you're dealing with all these really, I mean, if you're viewing them just from, let's say, purely, let's say, entertaining side of it all, I mean, these are amazingly cool things you're doing. They really are. So what do you do for your own entertainment, really? Like at home, what do you do?
I have two daughters. I was about to say young, but they're growing up pretty quickly, 16 and 11. And, they're kind of my muses in many ways, where they inspire me. And I've got to say, my youngest, I can even see a difference with that 5-year gap on how she and her friends of that generation are so comfortable in front of the camera. they put me to shame. Like they're just on cue. They know the angles. They know how to describe, talk. It is unbelievable. So I think we talk a lot about the creator economy. This generation that's coming up is going to be really fascinating in terms of how they create narratives and storytelling and experiences. So I think that's really something that I'm mindful of. With that said, I think we've had some learnings over the last few years of what I call unintended consequences of technology, and I always keep that in the back of my head of how can we create technology that is not only good for business but good for the world. And I'm quite proud of the thoughtfulness that went into, as just one example, Project Firefly, where if Adobe is held up to this higher standard of this platform company that celebrates creativities and creators, how can we create a generative AI that not only celebrates the derivative outcomes, but also the source artists as well? And so we're working on a pretty exciting world-class model to celebrate and monetize everyone within that ecosystem.
I think one last question here. So one thing with Adobe, which has been striking over the last 5 years, has been its move to platforms and ecosystems. And I don't want to get into the platform too much on this one, but on the ecosystem side, what is a partner ecosystem for for your domain look like? Even, I mean, obviously, I'm assuming, since you and Roberto Hernandez seem to be pretty good buddies, that they're part of that partner ecosystem. Yeah. But I'm kind of curious as to how you think of its composition. What kind of partners do you want to bring in? Meaning, what do they do? Not just what quality they are, but what do they actually do? I mean, how do you think about a partner ecosystem related to the metaverse, or to your point, whatever it's going to be called in a few years?
Yeah, thank you. You even kind of, I caught myself, we get so excited with these new technologies, Gen AI, metaverse, and so on, that at Summit just a few weeks ago, an equal star was what we're calling content supply chain. So thank you for bringing this up. And that's our vision, realization that Adobe's true superpower is not to compete on a feature level, but our true offering is when you stitch an end-to-end platform offering together, that's where you see the true value. And so we like to think of it, just to paint a quick picture, as almost Lego building blocks, where different partners or customers can pick and choose to create a bespoke platform. That's not to say, if you zoom out one layer more or one more ring, that there's multiple other Legos that are complementary that can be built upon with Adobe for an even more longitudinal end-to-end experience. So we're very much open into partnerships and compatibility for a greater experience as well.
Well, I did notice today, actually, you guys announced some significant video enhancements to both the products, which are more around Sensei and AI and other things. But one of the ones I noticed, especially given the content supply chain, was you've added a lot of collaborative capabilities to Frame.io, which is, of course, that's one of to me, that's a direct result of your content supply chain. And I saw that, I think it was announced this morning. So, we can already see the impact on just on the Adobe actually value chain. We can see the impact that your ecosystems and your platforms are having. in terms of the improvements within your own product lines. I noticed there were a lot of improvements that were more AI focused around Premiere Pro and and After Effects and some of the Creative Cloud stuff. But the one that really got to me because of Content Supply Chain was the Frame.io collaboration editions.
Yes.
Right, which would not have been there without the Content Supply Chain.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's the thing that came out for me of Summit is I hope the content supply chain management framework and platform stuff doesn't get overlooked because of all the emphasis on Firefly and generative AI. Because I thought it was really genius to as important as the supply chain was during the pandemic, and how customer experience really a big significant portion of it really started to go on, price is important, but is this going to get to me?
Yeah.
When is this going to get to me? And so to start treating content like that, like a physical good, I think is incredible important because of all the content that's coming at us on a regular basis. How much of it is getting through? Even the good stuff can't get through because there's just so much. And to start treating content in terms of how you treat physical goods and building a platform and a system, similar to what you do for a physical good for content, I think it's such a strong thing. And I hope that doesn't get overshadowed in all the excitement of what's going on. And rightfully so, the excitement is there. But yeah, Paul and I were both like, oh my God, this is really the stuff that is really exciting guys like us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great metaphor analogy that supply chain and what we just saw throughout the pandemic. We also saw, which we talked about briefly, is the role and importance of getting that content, to your point, on time to the right place. Collaboration is an enabler of that, and so Frame.io is really very much in our minds a world-class interface of what collaboration looks like. So I encourage everyone to, even if you don't use that tool, would love if you did, but if you don't, just check it out to see what world-class collaboration UI looks like as well.
Well, we're both big Creative Cloud users. I live in Premiere Pro, so very much.
I'm not there yet, but
so this has been a great conversation. We'd love to have you back again and talk about some of these things down the line, but we have to ask one last question, and depending on how you answer that, we may never talk to you again.
The stump question.
Not exactly.
No, it could be
more the stomp question.
Yeah, turn it to the stomp question or the stop question. All right, but I'm feeling pretty okay about this since you said you're from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite NFL team?
Oh, kind of the Pack, the Green Bay Packers.
As long as it's the Pack,
Yeah,
not the
you
Pats,
got it.
we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. So yeah, absolutely. This has been great, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Likewise, I always enjoy our conversations. So thanks for having me.
Many more to come, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Got it.
So on behalf of Chris Duffey, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
There's Minnie. We'll see y'all.
2 weeks.
Got to stay tuned. Yeah. There's going to be some differences next Thursday. All right.
Yes.
See you later. Bye.